All right. Good morning, everyone. This is going to be a busy Friday morning for us all, so I wanted to see if we could start as close to on time as we could. These are the continuation of our budget hearing presentations based on the recommended budget by Mayor Hodges, and we're going through the process this morning of hearing from 311, NCR, Neighborhood Community Relations Department, Communications Department, Emergency Management, Human Resources, and then later in the afternoon we'll be doing the City Coordinators Department, including the Intergovernment Relations Department. So this is action-packed, full of good things, and so to keep things on schedule, we're going to see if we can begin this morning. I think I'll invite our City Coordinator, Spencer Cronk, up to the podium and have him introduce the morning.
Great. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Quincy and Council Member. For the record, I'm Spencer Cronk, the Minneapolis City Coordinator. And as the Chair mentioned, today you'll be hearing presentations on the Mayor's recommended budget for 2015 from 6 departments that report to the Coordinator, and then finally from the Coordinator's office. As this is only my 44th day as Coordinator, I've asked leadership in each of these areas to present for themselves. However, I will be here the entire time in case questions arise that I can answer. With that, I'll turn it back to the Chair and we'll get started.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Been, of course, joined by Council Vice President Glidden and Council Member Andrew Johnson, and I'm sure others will be arriving soon. So we'll continue with the presentation. I'll invite our Interim Director of 311, Scott Wellen, to introduce the morning.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Scott Wellen, and I am the Interim Director of 311. This morning, I will be presenting the 2015 Mayor's Recommended Budget for 311, found on pages F49 through F54 of the budget book. Our mission at 311 is to serve as a single point of contact for local government information and services, providing accountability and transparency by simplifying access to information and services, enabling organizations to deliver services effectively, tracking requests for service delivery from inception to completion, and providing process solutions. 311 is made up of 31 full-time employees reporting up to the City Coordinator. I'd like to introduce some of the employees that helped 311 become successful in its mission. We have here Deborah Hudson, our Operations Manager, Leah Shefty, our Program Aide, focusing on community engagement, and David Moore, our Call Center Analyst, who produces many of the reports that we consume at the City. 311's recommended budget program overview shows the program of 311 existing in the general fund. The recommended budget for 311 is $3,683,465. 311 provides access to city services and information. By phone, 311 answers over 300,000 calls annually. 311 handles 18,000 emails annually, and voicemail about 5,800 per year. Over 90,000 service requests are created each year, and 6,000 police reports are entered annually. 20,000 service requests are entered via the internet or a mobile application for smartphones or tablets. 311 hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday now 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. 311 also provides performance reporting and tracking to city departments, citizens, and council members. 311 also works with departments implementing change through process improvements. 311 links to city goals of living well, one Minneapolis, and a city that works. 311 links to city values of equity, safety, health, and connectedness. Meeting the three priorities. 311 is meeting the three priorities of equity, growing the city, and running the city well. Under equity, 311 has multi-channel access to city services using voice, email, online, and mobile applications for smart devices. 311 has interpreters available for over 175 different languages. 311 has a diverse workforce. We are Minneapolis. 311 is also looking at a new channel for service, texting 311. How is 311 doing? We are implementing new technology. Scheduling software is proposed for 2015 to improve our ability to meet our service levels. As well, take the guesswork out of scheduling. Texting 311 is planned for 2015, allowing requests to be entered via a cell phone and then routed to 311 via a text message for service. We will be, or we are planning on adding a new mobile application in 2015 that'll allow for anonymous reporting. Our current mobile app is geared towards social media, encouraging the use of names. So this will allow 311 to add more case types onto the mobile app for telephones and smart device users. 311 added weekend hours in June of 2014, and we're experiencing about 650 customer interactions each weekend. So that would be adding up to close to 17,000 interactions a year.
Excuse me, Mr. Wellen. I wondered, can you tell me when the weekend hours were added? They were in June of this year. And
Chair Quincy, that is correct.
What were those expanded hours?
Those expanded hours were 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Saturday and Sunday.
Terrific. Thank you.
Process improvements. We recently worked with Public Works Utility Connections Department, improving the efficiency of communicating service requests. So presently we're automatically issuing emails to inspectors in the field to investigate utility cuts and utility cut failures. For language services, we're working with Neighborhood and Community Relations on a new process for the language line and actually putting at the front of our pre-connect to 311 language options. And we're analyzing the entire pre-connect before you get to an agent. We've been working with the health department, developing a hoarding process that'll allow us to measure hoarding based on information that we receive from citizens and give us a clear path in the future as to what we need to focus on from a hoarding perspective. With the Minneapolis Police Department, we will be engaged in additional training to improve police report data collection. And with Minneapolis Animal Control, we've developed new scripting and case types for 311 call center agents to reduce call transfers. Working with Minneapolis Traffic Control, we assisted training the traffic control agents on iPads to manage customer-generated violation complaints through 311. And increasing community engagement, involvement, and attendance, and creating measures. We're also looking at analyzing 311's data to focus on areas where we feel that where the data is showing that the citizens may not be as engaged as other areas. Here's the 2015 budget compared to 2014. This is from the budget book on page 52, F52. I spoke about our scheduling software. It is a 311 CARS recommendation for 2015. And the amount is for $47,500 for scheduling software with an annual operating cost of $3,000. This will allow us to enable the call center agents to schedule their own time in the system, scheduling their own breaks. And within 311, that is a challenge because that's part of our service level. If we don't have enough agents on the floor at any one time, and we were to make a scheduling mistake, that could affect our service levels. So with built-in rules in the system, it will manage break times and improve our operations. Our current service level without the CARS request is $3,632,965 to continue call center operations. And as I had spoken about the CARS request for the Aspect Empower agent scheduling software for our budget highlights. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
There are indeed. Thank you, Mr. Wellen, very much. Councilmember Glidden, but before you jump in, just wanted to note to colleagues that I am using speaker management, but I identified folks with their cards. So, Council Vice President.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. Maybe just start by saying how much I love 311, so you guys really do a fantastic job. And I will say one of the things I really appreciate about 311 is your ability to kind of course correct so frequently. So whether it's about your process on answering a certain type of call, or a department saying, can we have a new partnership on how to answer X or Y question, or incorporating new information like about our community action resources like you're doing right now, I think that you really are flexible and able to improve your service delivery with input, and that happens all the time. There's two areas, so I see you're just kind of at status right now, and I know you got an increase recently, and so that's expected. There's two areas, though, that I'm kind of interested in, and I just don't quite understand how much progress you think you're able to make in these areas while you're at current resources. And so the two areas are, one, how much we're able to increase our share of folks who are using either web or tablet or iPhone type apps to utilize service requests, service delivery, so how we're able to increase that. And then the second area is our ability to serve individuals who have English as a second language, sort of increasing our market share in that area. So I know those are two areas that I've heard 311 self-identify as areas for improvement, and I want to know how you think you might be able to work on those areas while at current service levels.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden, I can speak to, from the perspective of languages and using a mobile application. Our current application, which is authored by ClickFix, and it is the application in the Apple Store and the Google Store, is that already apparently has the ability for translation. So if your device is activated under Spanish or Hmong, those translations.
And just so I can correct, those are really two separate questions.
Yes.
And maybe you were considering them separately. So I'm thinking just generally about people with a second language utilizing whatever way they might want to utilize 311, including calling and so it's really just two separate questions about increasing the web or other basis of that kind of market share, and then how we're able to increase ability to serve people with English as a second language.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden. I see opportunities in our current engagement efforts being out in the community from the perspective of, and we've been doing a little bit of this already, connecting with Asian media, as far as how do we get to the folks that don't speak English. And so it's finding those key contacts within those organizations or within those groups of individuals that can lead us to those folks. And so right now that is a major focus of ours that we've identified. So I hope that answers your question.
What about your ability to increase market share on use of people who access you via the web and other things? So right now, 300,000 calls, 20,000 accesses by web. So the web-based, even though we know that's an increasing way that people are trying to find out about the city, it doesn't seem to be the way that they're reaching 311 or having that service delivery. And so I'm just a little bit curious about that, and what's our thoughts on increasing that?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden. You know, as far as adding a more language capability to the website potentially, is that where you're
No,
heading?
it's a totally separate question. It has nothing to do with language access. It has to do with me, the English speaker, my choice to either call 311, which takes more time, maybe, or to access via the web, and how you think of those, and whether maybe you don't think it's that important to increase the web access, and that's a fine response too. I just don't know how you're analyzing that and our ability to increase that.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden. Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely focused on increasing mobile device utilization and trying to tap into the folks that have those devices. And so what we're looking at is potentially some sort of a media outreach from the perspective of how do we get 311 out there and visible. People have to know about us first off to begin with, and past citizen surveys have showed us fairly, well, I think the last survey indicated that we had about a 70% penetration. So it's that 30% that we're going to be focusing on. And so we'll use the web. We're going to use media or a media campaign. And certainly when we go with pushing our new mobile app, we're going to be definitely hitting it very hard. And then as well, additional community engagement events. I hope that helps.
Thank you. So anyway, sorry to put you on the spot, but those are two
good.
areas that I just wanted to highlight. I think they are both in their separate areas, just both important, I think, for our ability to serve. They may cross multiple departments too. So, it's great that the city coordinator is here himself to kind of hear these questions about increasing our ability to serve the most residents possible. I will say, I know when 311 was rolled out, we really had a tremendous media push. It was very exciting, and we've never really done anything like that since. And so, not being a communications professional, I can only say, sounds like a good idea. And I hope to see these elements reflected perhaps in your business plans as they come forward.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glenn. Yeah, I do remember the train wrap quite distinctly, so I'd like to see that again.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I think 311 is one of those departments that I don't think about a lot because it is running so smoothly, because it is taking care of a lot of issues for people. I know it's very important to my residents, and I also want you to know that I recognize the good work being done at 311, and I think that the fact that it doesn't pop to mind a lot is a good sign in my books, because it is running so smoothly. And so I just want to thank you and your team for all the great work that you're doing.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Johnson, thank you very much. Look forward to serving you further in the future.
Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments, and I certainly would echo them. I think, as Council Vice President was saying, it's kind of up to all of us to help spread the word about the value and utility of 311. So we're doing it through our own newsletters, neighborhood associations, working in conjunction with the communications department to make that resource widely aware so it can be widely used. I wanted to just comment briefly on the C-Clicks program. Everybody knows that I'm not the most technically sophisticated user of technology up in the council chambers, but it was an early adoption for me for using the 311 application on my iPad, and I've used it all the time to go around reporting potholes, reporting graffiti, taking pictures and sending it. It's an incredibly convenient way to do that, and it really gets it in the hands of our service departments to go and resolve those situations. And as we make those reports and data available to our constituents, that it will be used more, and we share in the voting of how that is used every day, every application. So, Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, and I'm sorry I wasn't here for the presentation, and hopefully this hasn't been covered. But I was curious about any efforts to make the data more available to council offices so that we could use it more nimbly. I had an issue recently that I wanted to find out about, and I'll just be specific. So I was working on a amendment about farm stands and selling food at market gardens, and I was curious if there was ever a complaint about a farm stand. And so it occurred to me that, well, maybe if I had the access to the data, I could just search what were all the complaints about and go through all of them citywide for the last couple of years. But I don't really have access to all that data. I know that we get very good reports on a regular basis about the complaints in our ward and the top complaints and those things like that. But do you think that there's a database out there that council offices could get access to, that we could search, that we could find out how many complaints about what in what areas, or are we making any inroads into getting that more connected?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Gordon, I believe that we're working on that on a couple of different fronts. We're working with IT to create the open data portal, which will allow access to most 311 data from the perspective of areas where privacy is an issue, of course. But as far as internally, we do have the ability to go after information within 311 to go after specific verbiage such as markets within the database. And from the perspective of making the data available internally, that is also a possibility. And so we can certainly work with you to improve everyone's access to the internal data.
So I appreciate that, and hopefully we'll make some inroads, but I'm just curious. So right now we could ask somebody, could you please see if there were any complaints related to chickens, and they could do a search and come back with information for us and say, here's the complaints, here's how many there were in each year, and here's where they were, for example?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Gordon, my reporting guy here is saying no, and then of course I like to say of course.
All right. Well, let us leave that out there as the kind of thing that a council member has thought might be handy to have access and to figure out as you're working on kind of perfecting the system and doing open data and all that. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Good. Well, I'm not seeing any further questions from our committee. So thank you very much, Mr. Wellen, for your presentation and for all the work from your staff members at 311. Look forward to continued success. I guess our next presentation will be NCR. So we have a few minutes of transition, but as we set up that presentation. And again, just a call to reminder, colleagues, we are on speaker management if anybody would like to use that or use the card system. And we've been joined, of course, by Councilmember Gordon, Councilmember Cano, Councilmember Bender, and Councilmember Fry. Mr. Rubador, you've got an extra 4 minutes if you'd like to begin.
Chair Quincy and council members, good morning. For the record, I'm David Rubador. I'm the Director of the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department with the City of Minneapolis, and here to present the Mayor's 2015 proposed budget for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. You can find this on page F125 through 132 of the budget book. I also want to just note that we have been joined also by Doran Clark, one of our NCEC commissioners here, who's interested in tracking the work of the department and our budget process. One of the things I want to first start off by saying that there's some significant structural changes that are occurring in our budget for 2015, and I'll do my best to explain that and move this along, move the conversation along. But I want to just really emphasize that the mayor is proposing that the same service levels, program service levels of 2014 continue in 2015, in that there is no reduction in neighborhood funding proposed in the mayor's budget for 2015, and that the changes that we're talking about are more internal funding structural changes, as well as some program enhancements and engagement enhancements for the budget itself, or for the department itself, excuse me. First of all is the organizational chart for the department. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we can refer back to this if need be. But basically the department is focused in three specific areas. One is to support neighborhoods specifically. The second is around access and outreach, which is our cultural engagement work. And then the third is enterprise support and pulling those pieces together to support the enterprise and the work that we're doing. Our budget actually is organized in these three specific areas.
Excuse me, Mr. Rubador, just having a little paperwork problem up at the dais. Not your fault at all. Just want to make sure we have the right information in front of us. You do refer to the correct area of the budget book, but the presentation is not matching up yet. So if you could just... Looks like we got that under control. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, continue.
Please.
Okay, the next slide is an overview of the budget itself. Overall speaking, our budget for 2015 is proposed to increase by 8.9%, which is a little over $560,000. Our budget is funded from three different funding sources, and on this chart you'll see the general fund allocation, and then there's a column called non-general fund, and the non-general fund includes CDBG, which is Community Development Block Grant money, and what's called the Consolidated TIF, or the Consolidated Tax Increment Finance District in the city, both of which are under the non-general fund. The CDBG money is a relatively minor, I believe it's $102,000. The majority of that money actually comes from the Consolidated TIF. What's changing for next year is that the revenues that were projected off of the Consolidated TIF when the department was set up are increasing or projected to increase next year. And as a result, the mayor is proposing to do some changes on how we actually use the money. One is...
Excuse me, Mr. Rubador, I just wanted to make sure. Councilmember Johnson, did you want to wait? Okay, we'll let you continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem. I'll continue then, Chair Quincy. The changes, the structural changes are twofold. One is that we're looking at an expanded use of the TIF money and how the department and the city uses those funds. And then also a shift from the department administration and operations shifting from general fund onto the consolidated TIF. So there's a shift occurring there. As a result, our general fund is for next year decreasing by 8.6%, or a little over $89,000. I should note in that there's $150,000 enhancements, which I'll talk about later, around ADA. It's a one-time enhancement. So the ongoing reduction is actually about $240,000, or about 23% in reduction of general fund. This is offset by an increase in the consolidated TIF, or the non-general fund, by 12.6%. In addition, still staying on the overview aspect here, the department has requested, and the mayor is proposing, that we have a one-person FTE increase in our staffing. Our department is actually, our budget is organized into three different areas, which are listed here, which I'll go into in more detail, unless you would choose to stop and have me answer questions at this point.
Okay. Councilmember Johnson, followed by Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was looking at the allocation of revenues for the consolidated TIF district, and it grows pretty sizably over time because I know it's performing better now than it has in the past. And so I believe it was the intention of lawmakers to put this funding towards neighborhood associations and other neighborhood or community organizations. Could you tell me what are or were the expectations of the neighborhood associations if additional revenue came in off this consolidated TIF district?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Johnson, when the consolidated TIF was established, and we do have other people here, I got Ruben Acosta here from the attorney's office also who can speak to this if need be. But when the consolidated TIF was originally set up, it was designated, and it still is designated for two specific purposes. One is target center debt relief, and the second is neighborhood revitalization purposes. In the law, the current consolidated TIF, it doesn't specify what neighborhood revitalization purposes are. And so Ruben can speak to that if you'd like, the city attorney. But from the neighborhood standpoint, I would say, I mean, it always gets dangerous when you speculate, but the understanding is that this money would be used to support neighborhood funding programs and the department operations.
So just to be clear, part of it is no longer being used for that purpose. It's being shifted away to a couple other departments. Is that correct?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Johnson, actually I'll defer that to Sandy Christensen. I'm going to speak to the portion that's included in the NCR budget, and I believe Sandy can speak to any other uses that's proposed for the TIF.
Thank you, Chair Quincy, Councilmember Johnson. Some of the, as Mr. Rubador alluded to, some of the increased anticipated increment in the consolidated TIF district is proposed to be used to essentially replace general fund resources to allow them to be deployed in other areas. Within the TIF plan and within the statutory language, the TIF money may be used for support activities within the NCR department administrative costs, which much of the recommendations that are included in the mayor's recommended budget are categorically support activities for neighborhood revitalization purposes. So it's not being wholesale being shifted into other uses in other departments. It's still a related ancillary function of neighborhood revitalization purposes.
But I mean, it isn't the consolidated TIF being used to pay for some communication department positions?
The recommendation does include utilizing those resources in support of communication and outreach activities that would also support NCR as well as related activities. So while the positions are not housed in NCR, they will be working very closely and providing support services to the function.
Gotcha. And then my last question was, approximately what % of funding have neighborhood associations seen in terms of a decrease over perhaps the last decade or so?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Johnson, it's a little hard to do apples to apples comparison, so we have to do a little bit of a generalization here. Approximately, and Robert Thompson can correct me if I speak incorrectly here, but the NRP Phase 1 and Phase 2 capitalized at around $240 million over a 20-year period. The challenge in that is that neighborhood organizations don't have a specific timeline in NRP Phase 1 or Phase 2, and so that can extend out more than that. But if you really just take the 20-year period and prorate it, it's around $12 million per year that was going out under NRP. Again, that timeline continues on because many neighborhoods will take more than 20 years to spend that money. Under the CPP program, we put out close to, next year will be $3.9 million. And so that's the reduction, is basically from what was annualized in NRP in 2009 to the CPP in starting in 2011.
All right, thank you.
I don't know what the percentage of that is off the top of my head, but that's the change in the funding that occurred several years back.
Great.
And your presentation is focusing on the department budget.
Correct.
So I'll let you continue that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Before we begin, Councilmember Cano has a comment.
Thank you, Chairman Quincy. I am interested in hearing from the city attorney, and you mentioned he was going to speak on this a little bit later, just because I want to really understand the NRP purposes of how this TIF money is being redistributed within the organization. I'm a little concerned that we may be stretching the definition of that a little too much, especially when there's serious neighborhood revitalization efforts needed in the racially concentrated areas of poverty in our city, where buildings are idle, where development has stalled, where housing stock, we're losing housing stock, where we have the largest gap in home ownership for communities of color. So I am really curious to just hear more about the legal aspects of how this money is allowed to be used or not used. So I understand that that'll be coming up next, right?
Chair Quincy?
Go ahead, yeah,
I'll
please.
continue. If I may also, if I can circle back for a quick second, just a little bit more clarity on Councilmember Johnson's question around the comparison of NRP to the CPP program. NRP Phase 1 actually had significantly more revenues than Phase 2, so the decrease has been over time also. So Phase 2 had roughly about half the money that Phase 1 did, and then CPP moving forward. So it wasn't a sudden abrupt change, it was over a period of time. So I just want to come back and clarify that. So circling back to our budget, again, the changes that are proposed around the use of the TIF funds that are coming into the department are really around the new revenue that's coming in. The existing revenue and what was originally set up in the department remain in the same uses that were there before. So we, as I mentioned, our department is organized into 3 different programs. I'll go through these fairly quickly, but if anybody has any questions, I can stop and spend more time on it. The first is access and outreach, and this is really supporting the department's cultural engagement work in the city and engagement with underrepresented communities. That includes people with disabilities, and supporting the enterprise and being able to connect and remove barriers around engagement in those areas. Included in this is our work around the federally mandated engagement laws, which is Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act and Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which is specifically around the limited English proficiency work. This program also includes funding for the One Minneapolis Fund and the American Indian Memorandum of Understanding. The equity aspect of this and focusing on the mayor's priorities of equity and running the city well as growing the city. This work really focuses in on removing barriers to participation and as well as barriers to receiving and using city services and programs. As far as running the city well, it ensures compliance with federally mandated laws. In this particular area, we have 2 enhancements that we have that the mayor has included. The first of which is One Minneapolis Fund increase of $150,000. The One Minneapolis Fund is now 2 years old. It's been it's a program that really provides small grants to community-based organizations around leadership development, specifically within cultural communities, and connecting that work to either other engagement efforts of the city, whether neighborhood organizations or boards and commissions. For the first 2 years of the program, it was funded at $62,000. It's now been increased by $150,000 in the proposed budget to a total of $212,000. The Title II, ADA Title II compliance enhancement is a one-time request of $150,000, and this is to really help update the city's Title II work. That we have, we're in need of a significant updating of our city programs and services in compliance with ADA Title II. We have actually a council study session scheduled in November that will go through this in more detail, but basically this is to bring in an outside consultant to help start that evaluation process and in essence help develop a transition plan to be able to ensure that the city is ADA Title II compliant.
Mr. Rubador, just wanted to check in with council members if they had any comments. Councilmember Gordon, did you wish to make your comment?
I could do that. I just wanted to go back a little bit to the issue of the tax increment financing district and the projections for the next 5 years especially. I think that this is a matter that deserves more attention and careful consideration. And it's something that I could easily take up at our committee with community engagement. It's also something I think we could even tee up as part of the budget if we wanted to. This year, it's close to $500,000, I think, that's that's coming forward, that's moving out of the department even, and then in future years it could be more. So I think a thoughtful discussion about that is definitely in order. There's lots of options. We kind of would, I think, have a lot of discretion about what happens, and we should be included. So I'm open to trying to do that, be in the next month or few, and using my committee or our committee to do that, or find other ways too.
Good. Councilmember Fry, followed by Council Vice President Glidden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, with regard to the consolidated TIFs district, yes, we are seeing increases over the last decade or so now. But first off, the legislation, I think, was pretty clear. It was not capital N, capital R, capital P. It was lowercase n, lowercase r, lowercase p, meaning you could go to neighborhood revitalization programs broadly as opposed to specifically NCR and neighborhood programs. Furthermore, there's no other department in the entire city that I'm aware that gets these automatic allocations. Everybody else has to fight over money: police, fire, CPED, and going forward, we are going to see some additional incremental gains out of TIF, and I don't think it makes sense for us just to automatically allocate money. Furthermore, if you could go back to Mr. Rubador, and by the way, thank you for meeting with me and several of others previously, but if you could go back a couple slides, one forward, and one more forward.
I don't think it advanced.
Okay. So is there another slide that shows program enhancements, or is that the only one?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Fry, this is actually just the enhancements for the access and outreach. There are enhancements that I'll be getting to when we get into the neighborhood support. So there's 3 other enhancements included in that slide.
Okay, and I'll hold my comments until then. Thank you.
Please.
Continuing on, the next slide here really just indicates how the access and outreach work supports the city goals. Much of this work is focused around engagement and supporting most of the city goals. So if you see on here, Living Well, One Minneapolis, a hub of economic activity and innovation, and a city that works. It also addresses a number of the values in the city, specifically around equity, health, vitality, and connectedness. The second program that in our budget is...
I'm sorry, Mr. Rubador, Council Vice President did have a question.
Yeah, so just on those enhancements, are those coming from the consolidated TIF or other designated source, or are they from the general fund?
The funding source, Mr. Rubador?
I'm sorry, I didn't...
On the 2 enhancements that were in this program area, are they from the consolidated TIF or are they from general fund?
Chair Quincy and Council Vice President Glidden, the One Minneapolis Fund increase is coming from the consolidated TIF, and the ADA Title II compliance is coming from general fund, and that's the one-time enhancement that I referred to earlier that will go away the following year and thus reduce our general fund allocation in subsequent years.
Okay, thank you.
So next slide is where most of the program activity is called coordinated engagement, and this is where most of the department's work really concentrates. This is around bringing our cultural engagement work, our work with disabilities, community, our neighborhood work really into the city enterprise and supporting the city enterprise as a whole. So all of the aspects, all of the department staff work in the coordinated engagement. This work focuses in on the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, which is the council is aware of and that we're working on. It includes the resident survey, which is a biannual survey that we do to understand perceptions and of city work and how people see the city. The third one is around underengaged communities and multiple strategies that we use in order to connect with cultural and underengaged communities in the city. I got boards and commissions support in here. There's a major overhaul of the boards and commissions appointment process that the city clerk and our department will be bringing forward. This also includes our diversity survey of our boards and commissions, which will be coming out later this month. It also includes a variety of other things. CPED sector teams, our neighborhood and access and outreach staff both support CPED, community planning and economic development, pardon the acronym. Sector teams, which is really incorporating community engagement on that planning level at the city's development arm. Includes City Academy, our Community Connections Conference, Yellow Ribbon, neighborhood priority plans, neighborhood housing programs, things like that. So there's quite a bit in here. On the mayor's priorities, we think it hits all three areas quite well. Broadening engagement to under-engaged communities obviously helps us address equity. Growing the city, safe and vibrant neighborhoods are key to attracting residents and retaining residents in the city, and running the city well and making sure that a well-engaged population is essential to informing city decision-making processes and making it a stronger city. In this particular area, we don't have any enhancements that are being proposed. This next slide just goes over how this work affects city goals. And again, living well, one Minneapolis, great places, and a city that works. And it hits a number of the values in the city too. I won't go through those individually, but I can stop that if you'd like. I have a few charts here just to show some of the how we measure this work. The first one here is around the diversity survey. This is a little bit old data. The 2014 data will be coming out this month, but it shows a chart of what the racial composition is in the city and then also what the racial composition is on our boards and commissions. You can see that we have some work to do in that particular area. I'm happy to report when the survey comes out, just to kind of whet your appetite here a little bit. It will show some improvement in a number of areas. But there's definitely work to be done on that and engaging cultural communities in the city and diversity factors, diversity of our boards and commissions. The next slide is actually from a resident survey. We will actually be doing the resident survey again in 2015, in the spring or winter of 2015, which is this particular indicator was a question that is around whether people feel that Minneapolis government is good or very good at providing meaningful opportunities for citizens to give input into important issues. You can see the trend line over time is going up. We continue to try to move that up in a positive direction. The next slide is on neighborhood support and neighborhood engagement work. This is really the kind of the nuts and bolts of our neighborhood programs. So this includes funding for the community participation program that's included in here. It also includes administrative and program support for both community participation and the NRP program, Neighborhood Revitalization Program. The NRP dollars are actually in CPED, so they're not in our budget, but we administer that program. And it provides a lot of the back office support, for lack of a better term, that's needed in order to support our neighborhood engagement system. We have 70 neighborhood organizations in the city of Minneapolis, which you're all well aware of. They're all independent, private, nonprofit organizations. And what we try to do is work on compliance with our neighborhood funding programs, provide support for neighborhoods to do their work well, and also to do financial management oversight of neighborhood organizations, making sure that the public dollars are being spent in an appropriate way. So you can see on here, I have a list of a number of the back office support things that we do in order to support this engagement system. It includes office, D&O insurance, liability insurance. It includes the audit function that we do and when we audit neighborhood organizations. Regarding the mayor's priorities, through equity, the blueprint for an equitable engagement is our work that we're doing right now in order to really help broaden support for neighborhood organizations to include communities of color in their work. It grows the city by helping to create strong and vibrant neighborhoods, and it runs the city well by effective program management. There are three areas of enhancements that we're asking for here.
Okay, we'll wait. Continue.
Okay. Three areas of enhancement in here. The first is a community participation program increase. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's no recommended change in the funding for neighborhood organizations for 2015 other than an inflationary adjustment, $120,000 increase, so that 2015 dollars are the same buying power as 2014. Second one is a neighborhood support specialist position. In your budget book, it actually lists this at $150,000. It's actually $80,000, and then the evaluation of the neighborhood programs, which is the third enhancement we're asking for, were put together. So it's the staffing position is $80,000 of that $150,000. Basically, right now we have 4 neighborhood specialists that work with neighborhood organizations, and then 1 person that manages that program. And our neighborhood specialists are working between 16 and 17 neighborhoods each. By adding an additional staff person, we can reduce that number down to around 14, which gives us better connection with and oversight with neighborhood organizations and being able to support them better in the work that they're doing. The last one on here is the neighborhood program evaluation, and that's asking for one-time funding to be able to bring an outside evaluator in to look at the CPP program, its effectiveness, things that we could be doing better, things that we're doing well, and basically being able to get a good review from an outside perspective of the work of that program.
When would that, I assume that would come from some RFP. What would be the timing of that in the 2015 budget year?
Chair Quincy, we would like to actually move on that pretty quickly, and so we'll have to wait for the budget to be approved, and if this is still included, we would start the development of the RFP process right away. My guess is just through the RFP process and the timing of all that, it would probably be about mid-year by the time we'd actually have somebody on board. So that would be June or July would be my guess, my best estimate on the timeline.
Okay, I'm going to Councilmember Palmisano and then Council Vice President Glidden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rubador, actually, could you go back a slide? Maybe no, here. Can you tell me a little bit more about the audit and financial management that we oversee in neighborhood programs, and
Sure.
a little bit about how many of those do we do a year, or what does that program look like? Because I see it as a real big risk for our enterprise, frankly, that we say that we do these audits.
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Palmisano, we revamped our approach to how we do audits a couple years ago, and with the final piece actually getting put in place last year. We have now an audit committee, which includes 4 different auditors, so we have a variety of people to pick from that are on contract on a regular basis. We did an RFP process to get that into place. Regarding your question specifically, we audit we either do a financial review, agreed upon procedures, or a full audit of a neighborhood organization once every 3 years, unless the organization actually has more money, significantly more money going through it. So some of our neighborhood groups actually receive a lot more money, so we'll speed that up. Also, if there's issues that arise that warrant us going in earlier, we will do that also. So if there's issues around board quorums, if there's issues around, questions around particular, when I'm thinking of financial controls that an organization may be using, we reserve the right to go in sooner, but every organization is reviewed by the financial team at least once every 3 years.
Thank you.
Council Vice President.
I had a few items. One was actually kind of related to Councilmember Palmisano's question, and this is more something that I would like to see from NCR is perhaps a new look at what is both our responsibility and ability to review and have oversight of neighborhood organizations. I feel like as time goes on and sometimes problems arise, we're continuing to review and have a need to rethink what is both our responsibility and then what is our ability, because these are separately organized 501c3s, and yet you look at and I often hear, well, we just give them money, so it kind of our responsibility is related to use of funding that we provide. Mm-hmm. However, you look at this list of services, and in addition to the fact that we have to designate neighborhood organizations as having the privilege of being a citizen participation organization, and it really says our relationship perhaps is greater than that. And I think this is something where we need a fresh look, together with probably the city attorney and maybe some other professionals who know more about, again, what should we be looking at here? Because I feel like these are questions that arise, and we seem to, I think, be trying to address issues as they arise, but clearly I think we need a more comprehensive look at what should be our responsibility, and so that we are also better in communicating when we do get questions. This is where we come in. This is what we regularly do. these are special things we do if questions arise about these organizations and their spending of funding or their citizen participation role as designated by the city of Minneapolis. So I just want to put that out there. I don't know if it is exactly a staff direction thing with the budget or if maybe this is more a conversation with NCR and other departments, but I do think this is an important issue that we need to take on in a more direct way.
Chair Quincy, if I may respond a little bit to that. Council Vice President Glidden, I'm glad you brought that up, and I agree with you 100%. This is a unique relationship. These are 70 different nonprofit organizations that are independent, but to a large extent, in many cases, we're their primary funder, if not their only funder. And also, there's a number of support services that we put in place in order to ensure that this engagement network is operating and functioning well. Couple things on this. One is that I think adding a neighborhood support specialist next year helps us to get in a little bit more closer relationship with neighborhoods. So that helps to add that capacity. That's one of the things we're looking at. But also internally in the department, we have been talking a lot more about this particular aspect about what our relationship is with neighborhood organizations and how we make sure that we define both compliance and also this notion of that we're asking neighborhood organizations to engage in an equitable way. And that requires a certain amount of subjectivity, I guess, for lack of a better term, in interpreting whether they're successful in that, but also support in being able to get there. So I think the enhancements that we're bringing forward will help us move in that direction, but it also, I think it's a great conversation that we should be having and really looking at not so much the past of what the neighborhood organizations have done, but what we are expecting in the future as we move forward. So both the evaluation aspect and the adding of the neighborhood support specialists, I think, help build that capacity, but then to continue that conversation moving forward.
So if you could move forward one slide, I actually had a question about the neighborhood specialist, and I know I've heard that this was in the budget, and originally actually I didn't have a question about it. I know that there are a lot of neighborhoods and we're trying to figure out how to do those service levels, but as we continue to kind of talk about, I think, what are the different program areas of NCR, because you have different areas where you do more generalized community engagement, where you do more generalized access and outreach. But here we're talking about the neighborhood specialist position. I think originally that position, at least in my mind, has been more about assistance around contracting, around access to city funds, around navigating the complications of NRP Phase 1 and Phase 2 and new programs. And I'm not sure I quite understand what new service levels would be provided with this neighborhood specialist, because again, I feel like I am more interested in more defined services that we think are of highest priority for neighborhoods, as opposed to more generalized services that may be really, about engagement and things like that, that really I think are about the neighborhood's own ability to increase their capacity, and then these other areas within your budget where you have staff that is more focused on how to help with capacity around community engagement.
Sure. Chair Quincy and Council Vice President Glidden, one, the aspect of the administration of the programs themselves, in and of itself, I think would warrant having another neighborhood specialist, just because that is a very significant amount of work. But also these other aspects that you're talking about helping neighborhoods transition into a better understanding of what we expect from the city, what we're looking for, having that, enhancing that relationship, having more capacity to do that, I think is going to help us get there. With 16 to 17 neighborhoods per staff person, it's just really hard to get that relationship beyond the contractual level and getting more into the qualitative aspect of the work. So, but even with that, I would say just the contracting, the processing of the contracts as they come in, reimbursement requests and what have you. We need that additional support to do that. We also are looking at a number of policy changes that we are looking at implementing and having more work, being able to have more work around in that particular area. Our audit policy, as I was mentioned earlier, as much as we've revamped our process, we really need to update the policy to reflect on that. We're also looking at establishing what has been internally a departmental protocol about how we deal with compliance issues, to making that more of a policy about what our expectation is around the qualitative work that we're expecting from neighborhood organizations, and making that clearer for people and taking that forward. So we need more help in being able to put that together. So.
And then my last question is, are these 3 programs or enhancements on this page, are they all funded from the consolidated TIF or from general fund?
Chair Quincy, Council Vice President Glidden, they're all consolidated TIF.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fry, followed by Gordon and then Bender. And I think you just have one more program enhancement to discuss, or are you finished with your?
Chair Quincy, these are all the program enhancements.
So you're great. This is an opportunity then for final conversations on this topic, and we'll be able to keep pretty much on time. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, on the second bullet point, new neighborhood specialist position for $80,000. I totally understand how reducing the number of neighborhoods that these specialists have to cover from 16 to 17 to 13 to 14 would allow for greater interaction with the community. My question, though, is, I know you guys handle contracts. I know you can handle sort of the allocation of money, granting requests. What would, and I'm really looking for kind of specifics here, what would this additional position allow for? What would it allow these specialists to do? Is it like attend more meetings? Is it, and if once they are attending those meetings, what exactly are they doing? I just really need a good idea.
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Fry, yes, what it would do is just reduce the number, I shouldn't say just, but reduce the number of neighborhood organizations each staff person is assigned, so they can work more closely with them. We're dealing with, at any given time, a number of bylaw issues across the city, complaints, grievances that might be coming in, support on being able to connect neighborhood priorities to city engagement or city work. So, one of the things under the CPP program we require neighborhoods to do is come in with a priority. And many times that includes other city departments and being able to have more capacity to connect that work with other city work. So it's a lot more, it's the relation, helping to support the relations and not only just the contract and the kind of logistical piece, but also the relationship between the neighborhood and the city.
Okay, so I just kind of want to break that down. So the first piece was grievances. So it's grievances by the neighborhood about and or to the city. Am I incorrect?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Fry, actually internally within each neighborhood organization, there's board development work that we help support. There's contract management. There's grievances that people within the neighborhoods may bring forward with the neighborhood organization. What we try to do in many cases is resolve those long before they go into a formal process in order to make sure that it doesn't become an issue that is detracting from the neighborhood doing the work that they should be doing or could be doing. So it's not grievances to the city, it's internal grievances that may be arising within different neighborhoods.
Okay. So when you say grievances arising, so basically it's sort of internal conflict resolution within the neighborhood itself because different members of the board have issues with each other. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Okay,
so that's the grievances piece. The contract management side, that's mainly, for the most part, that's paperwork, right?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Fry, it's a little bit of both. Because a lot of times when under the CPP program, neighborhoods will submit their proposed use of the funds, and then we work with them, especially if there's underengaged communities in their neighborhood, where we work to make sure that they're identifying strategies that they're going to use in order to engage people, that we're working with them to make sure that they're leading towards some kind of outcome around a neighborhood priority plan. And so it a lot of times requires us to go back and revisit the plans that they're bringing in. Under the NRP work, which is more on the contractual side, making sure that Plan amendments are handled in accordance with the rules, you know, and the processes that they use to engage the community in order to make their decisions has been handled. So a lot of that is monitoring and watching and supporting where need be any corrections that in that process to be done. It's a lot of hands-on and relational work.
Okay. The community participation program increase, this is the first bullet point. It says it's for an inflationary, a 3% increase for 2015 funding cycle. So what I take this as, and I think you told me during our meeting, is that you get a 3% increase just to tie the budget to inflation. Is that right?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Fry, yeah, if I understand your question correctly, this would really just adjust the allocation next year 3% upwards to it, so it's the same spending power in 2015 as 2014.
Okay, and I think probably my question is more for Sandy on this one. Is do we have an inflationary increase set in for any other department at our city that you're aware of?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Fry, for the assumptions that are contemplated in the 2015 recommended budget, there are some, I say, baseline adjustments that could be categorized as inflationary or current service level provision assumptions, including certain assumptions for contractual increases in staff wages and the cost of benefits, for operational areas of the departments that are contractually based, meaning that we've already bought into a certain obligation based upon a contractual commitment to provide for an inflationary increase. That's typically built into the base of the departmental budget. However, if there is a requested inflationary increase above that, which is obligated, or meaning we have to do it, it's an option, then it comes through as a request, which is the item that's included in the NCR department.
So this would be a request above and beyond normal staffing increases, and this would not be a request that's set into the budget itself?
Correct.
Are there any other departments that have a similar request this year?
There are some other departments that, due to market conditions and other uncontrollable, I guess, factors, using Public Works as an example, that commodities-based activities within departments will occasionally come forward with a request or a need for supplemental budget because of outside factors.
Okay, I think I understand. No further questions.
Good. Thank you, Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation and the discussion here. I just wanted to pause a little bit on that evaluation of neighborhood programs. $70,000. I think that some of that work has already been begun this year. We had some community meetings where we gathered a lot of feedback. It was kind of in the framework of the blueprint for equity, but we also got a lot of input on other things elsewhere. And so we'll be collecting those and looking at ways that we could use that information to make future improvements. There's also been discussions already going on putting together a group of neighborhood leaders to help us figure out what is a fully functioning, healthy neighborhood organization and what are those characteristics and how can we help all our neighborhood organizations be that and hold them accountable and balance that. And we've also had some discussions already with Cura at the University of Minnesota about coming in and helping with an evaluation. And I think that $70,000 there for an evaluation could be very, very, very helpful. And it's my understanding, and I guess I can ask this question, at this point we're still interested in kind of shaping what that will be specifically, and all council members would be welcome kind of to give input and help us see what do we think the evaluation should be and should focus on.
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Gordon, that is absolutely correct. We have not formalized exactly what that's going to be used for yet. We still want to be able to scope that out. It would go through the RFP process, which would go to the council. My intent is to involve your committee, the HESA committee, on helping to shape that, but really taking that time to do an evaluation about a number of these concerns that people are bringing up. How do we best evaluate the program the housing, excuse me, in the work that we're doing with neighborhood organizations and make that better work. So we still have room to clearly define what that will be.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that could be very helpful. I know we've had a new structure now for a couple of years, so we've seen how it's up and running and can compare it back and also kind of with the goals we were hoping for it to accomplish and see how we're doing. So I think that could be very helpful and very important.
All right, I've got Council Member Bender, followed by Council Member Warsame, and then Council Member Cano and Palomisano. I'm just asking members to be cognizant of the time, and we're about 10 minutes over now, so if we could keep questions and responses as brief as possible. Council Member Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there was some discussion of this earlier, but could you clarify how the evaluation is different from and necessary above the existing work on the blueprint for equitable engagement and the work that staff is already doing to sort of clarify and enhance how we're working with neighborhood organizations?
Sure. Councilmember Quincy and or Chair Quincy and Councilmember Bender. The Blueprint for Equitable Engagement is a community engagement strategy to be able to go out to the communities, under-engaged communities, basically, of the city, to get input into, from their perspective, of what we could be doing differently and what we could be doing in order to support broader engagement. The initial phase of that has now been completed. The last focus group was at the end of September. I think we're going to revisit one of the focus groups yet in October, but bringing back some recommendations to the PESA committee around things that we could do programmatically and operational wise in the department about how to improve engagement and remove barriers, and again, from the community's perspective. The evaluation is really intended to have an outside evaluator come in and kind of go through the nuts and bolts of the program. I anticipate that would likely involve interviewing council members, as well as department staff, as well as neighborhood organizations around the effectiveness of the program itself, and getting more of a professional critique of the work also. So the two of them combined help to improve the system. So that's how I see those two working together.
Okay, thank you. That was my understanding. So I think that's a reasonable strategy. One thing that, just a quick comment, I think that that would be very helpful, but it seems to me there's another piece, which is that how does the engagement that neighborhood organizations are doing fit in with our enterprise-wide community engagement? And I think it might be helpful to start with that bigger question, which is that we have public engagement happening in our public works department, in our, through our police department, through CPED, through many of our other departments. And as an observation, I think we could do a better job of coordination and, I think there may be some redundancies that we could, identify that where we could be more efficient, particularly my observation, I think a lot of the neighborhood organizations are using a significant amount of their funding for staff time and administrative expenses. So how can we best utilize those hours of staff time that are taxpayer supported to really work together with our directly funded staff people in all of these departments that are needing to engage with the community for, very specific decisions. What should the road look like in front of, the neighborhood, for example?
Councilmember Warsame.
The question I have for David is, the NRP had, it had a bias towards homeowners and home ownership and programs around 70% plus for homeowners, which was very frustrating for neighborhoods such as Cedar Riverside and Ventura Village and others that had a high level of renters. Mm-hmm. I mean, the CPP, can you just touch upon, is that same bias still in the program, or is it just anybody who applies, or is the programs dependent on the specific neighborhood? Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Warsame, if I understand your question correctly, the NRP was set up as an investment-based program, and by law, 52.5% of the money had to be spent on housing. Much of that money was spent around homeownership housing, albeit a number of neighborhoods did well in getting some of that funding to renters. In fact, West Bank Community Coalition was one of the neighborhoods that did that fairly well. But by kind of design of that program, it tended to attract more homeowners than not. this community participation program is not an investment-based program, the new program. It's an engagement-based program, which is really working to support neighborhoods and being able to engage all the members of the community, including renters, including communities of color, including people with disabilities, in the engagement process. And so it's switching from that investment program to an engagement model. Some of the work, and I think to Councilmember Fry's question earlier, is we're working with neighborhoods to make that transition, and that transition sometimes can be difficult to do, but the new program is really focused in around, I think what your point was there, around engaging everyone in the community, and so that's what we're working on.
Thank you. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, my communities of color use NCR, the NCR department, a lot. I come from the most diverse ward in the entire city with the largest Latino population, the largest American Indian population in the city, as well as a significant East African community. So I interface with NCR's work a lot, and I'm really proud to be a part of a unique program in the nation where civic engagement is supported and funded by the city. In East Phillips and other poor neighborhoods of the city, we've seen NRP dollars and this TIF money really support affordable housing development, really support neighborhood revitalization efforts that probably would have never been able to be accomplished under any other program. It's really what turned Murderopolis into the thriving city that we have today. So that's the kind of history we're talking about here today. And unfortunately, NCR doesn't have decades and decades long establishment history like a Public Works or a Minneapolis Police Department. You're a relatively new department in the history of departments. You know, we did go from the NRP phase where a lot of communities of color were excluded from that process to now having the city be more involved by establishing your department, to now looking at evaluation systems that we can put in place to really analyze and continue to develop the transformative nature of this department, to continue to uplift neighborhood voices and have residents who, you know, elect us here, make sure that they're active, engaged, and that we're not governing without their support and without their voice at the table. So with that, you know, I really wanted to make sure that I shared a story that happened this morning. I met with a group of Latino community members who are wondering how does the city get guidance on policy development through the Latino community, and how can we work with NCR to better do that? And so they started asking me questions about what's the data from other departments about how does the health department serve the Latino community? Where's the information for that? How can we get this? And so for me, it was really going back to NCR and saying, you know, can we really look at a way that this department can help audit other departments or help us get more information about the community engagement needs of these other places, because folks in the community want to be involved. They want the information. They want to identify the gaps. They want to zero in on solutions. And I think some of the things that you highlighted in your program today, in addition to the One Minneapolis funds, which have been really successful in uplifting communities of color, are really great ideas. So I'm just excited to keep working with you, and I'm looking forward to figuring out how we can get this budgeting process done and figure it out in a way that really empowers the communities that are in our neighborhoods and not so much fatten up city government.
Chair Quincy, if I may respond, I appreciate, Councilmember Cano, I appreciate your comments and the work, notes on the work that we're doing. One thing I just wanted to note in there, your comment around looking at other departments and helping to do an evaluation of that. And I just say this because we do have an NCEC commissioner here who, that is one of the areas that they are working on developing, and being able to do an evaluation of both the connection of our department with other departments, but also the engagement efforts that other departments are doing. We're constructing this in a way that's intended to be constructive, not negative. So we're in the process of doing that, and we're getting fairly close to having that done. So we'll be moving that forward. Part of the thing is when we started the Blueprint for Equitable Engagement, the task force that was working on that held off to see if there was some additional input that came in from the outreach to the different community groups that might directly affect that work.
Good. Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rubador, I'm sorry if you went over this. I just have one simple question. The evaluation of neighborhood programs, who's doing that evaluation?
Chair Quincy and Councilmember Palmisano, we haven't determined that yet. That would be an RFP process that we would do. We'll scope that out and then have the council approve the RFP, and then we'll seek consultants to come in, but it would be an external evaluation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you. About that evaluation, I just wanted to acknowledge that I thought Councilmember Bender's comments were great, and I think definitely what we want to be able to do is look at how neighborhood organizations are serving the other departments and their needs and interfacing or not serving and what's broken there. So hopefully we'll capture that, and we'll make sure that that's part of it as well. And just to reiterate, I think as we're scoping out what the evaluation should be, any comments or ideas anybody on the council has would be valued.
Seeing no further comments or questions, I appreciate your responses and your presentation, Mr. Rubador, and we'll just allow for any transition to the Communications Department. Please, Mr. Lively, welcome.
Thank you. Chair Quincy, members of the committee, I am Matt Lively, and I'm the interim director in the Communications Department, and I'm here today to present the mayor's recommended 2015 budget for communications. I'll leap right into the presentation, and of course, I'm happy to take questions at any point.
Just wanted to note to colleagues, of course, using speaker management, and these presentations refer to page F66 in the budget book. Begin there.
Sure. As most of you know, the Communications Department is a team of about 11 folks. Well, right now it is 11. We have 12 FTEs within the department who provide strategic communication support for city departments and the enterprise as a whole. As you can see from our organizational chart, we have a number of primary functions, which I'll list really quickly. That includes proactive and reactive communications, including media relations, web and social media, and broadcast of city council and committee meetings like the one today. We also do some limited original video production, as well as employee communications with city staff. We also provide graphic design services for the enterprise and for specific department projects. The mayor's recommended budget for 2015 for communications is about $2.39 million. That covers the 6 budget programs you see here. I will spend a few minutes going over those. Because we have a small staff and all of us perform a wide range of duties, most of our staff show up here spread out over multiple programs. The 2015 budget represents an 8.9% increase over 2014, which is primarily attributable to 2 new proposed positions, which you heard about in the previous presentation, and I'll talk more about those shortly. That recommended enhancement is $174,000. To look at each of these programs more closely, Proactive Communications is our largest program with a proposed budget of about $950,000 for 2015. This program covers a lot of what you think of when you think about the work that communications does. It funds the strategic proactive work that we do working with departments to get city news and information out to the residents. We use a number of communications vehicles to do this work, including media relations, our city website, city social media on Facebook and Twitter, and our 2 government TV channels and other materials as appropriate. This is the program where the mayor has recommended the addition of 2 full-time employees, which creates some exciting opportunities for us to expand our communications, especially with residents who speak languages other than English. These 2 positions at a basic level will allow us to more actively communicate with the public by working more closely with departments to plan and carry out communications efforts. As discussed in the previous presentation a few minutes ago, these new resources will support the work we do in coordination with NCR, and I'll provide more detail on that. The increased capacity is exciting because it allows us to put a stronger focus on communications that reach audiences in multiple languages, primarily Spanish, Somali, and Hmong. As well as with community-based media. As you know, Neighborhood and Community Relations manages the translation process for the city, and we use those services, as other departments do, to translate some of our content and have that distributed out through our communications channels. That system works well, and one area where we can really enhance this work on our end is in establishing new connections and to get translated content out into the community. And also in expanding video productions we do in multiple languages. Those are very staff intensive, and this would help us move that farther. We've made good strides in developing relationships with multi-language media. However, there's a lot more work that can be done in this area. As one quick example, last winter, we spread information about snow emergencies and winter parking restrictions to residents who speak Spanish, Somali, and Hmong through a number of websites, radio, and TV outlets that reach those communities. That kind of work requires a lot of hands-on coordination, and these positions will help increase our ability to do that. And as a quick note on staffing, the communications department has been reduced by 3 positions in the last 7 years. So this proposed enhancement would be a really significant opportunity for us in this area.
Excuse me, Mr. Lively. Sure. Councilmember Cano has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, there's I think it's page 2, where you talk about the program name, the current funding enhancements and FTEs. Sure. Can you just summarize the total of current FTEs in the department right now? Because there's a lot of 0.6, 0.8, 0.35.
Sure. Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano. Right now we have 12 FTEs in the department. We currently have 11 staff due to our vacancy since the previous department director left about 6 months ago. But we have 12 FTEs. This proposed enhancement would bring us to 14.
Thank you.
Just a few seconds on this. Because the work cuts across all functions of the city and works with all departments, it does touch on all of the city's goals and values in various ways. Our second program is Transparency in Government, with a proposed budget of $450,000 for 2015. Generally, this reflects our work to open up a window into city government for the public so they can access and engage in the governing process. Generally, this includes our broadcasts of city council and committee meetings, reactive media relations, and original video programming in Spanish, Somali, and Hmong on topics like fire safety, snow emergency, voting, pet licensing, and others, just to name a few. Just a few results measures related to this program. One thing I'll highlight is that in the last few years, we've really transitioned to cable channel 14, which is one of our 2 channels, to focus primarily on programming in languages other than English. As you can see here, programming today is pretty evenly divided between Spanish, Somali, Hmong, and English on that channel. And again, because this program cuts across all departments and all the work that the city does, it touches on all of our goals and values. The third program is Tools and Training. It's a smaller program, proposed at $218,000, and it covers 3 key areas. The first is we produce training videos that help departments improve their training and the efficiency of that training. One good example of this is the new ethics training module that we worked with the City Attorney's Office, HR, and IT to create. It's a great new tool for delivering this training to all employees, and really importantly, it cuts down on the ongoing city resources needed to conduct this training. This program also includes a number of in-person and classroom trainings the communications department provides to other departments, as well as periodic training and development for our communications department staff. Reflected here, just quickly, you can see that the communications department has added 3 new classroom trainings in the last couple of years, and we have some new classes coming up this fall. This program helps us move forward on a few key goals, including one Minneapolis and a city that works. Our next program is internal communications, and these are probably familiar to everyone here. They reflect our efforts to partner with city departments to foster an engaged and informed city workforce. This program is proposed at $236,000 for 2015. The primary communications tools we use around this are the City Talk intranet site, as well as the Minneapolis Matters electronic employee newsletter. This program also includes the work that goes into creating and distributing the daily news clips that all of you and many folks at the city receive. Here you see a couple of measures from the most recent management survey reflecting our internal communications work. And again, because this work can cover the work of all city departments, all of the city's goals and values come into play here. Our next program is emergency preparedness. Our emergency preparedness program is proposed at $51,000 for 2015 to ensure the communications team is trained and equipped to respond to emergencies. It also includes the time we spend responding to emergencies, which can range from small-scale events that happen with some regularity, things like water main breaks, to larger emergencies like significant storms or tornadoes. It also helps us coordinate with departments in a number of areas just to be prepared for emergencies, including working with the health department on readiness for things like pandemics. And this program primarily supports the City That Works goal with an emphasis on the safety and health of people in our community. The final program I have for you today is the Public Access Television Program, which is proposed at about $470,000 for 2015. This program is direct funding to the Minneapolis Television Network, or MTN as you may know it, which provides public access television broadcast and equipment and airtime on cable TV channels here within the city. MTN is a significant resource to many cultural communities within the city, since it allows the public to produce and share video content in a variety of languages to air within Minneapolis.
Excuse me, Mr. Lively. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the question of the public access, is that something only available through Comcast? And do we also know how many subscribers roughly would be able to have access to that?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Johnson. The MTN channel, along with our city government channels, are broadcast on Comcast cable within the city of Minneapolis. So the folks who would be able to access those channels are folks who have cable service within Minneapolis. And that's one reason, obviously, that we as a city also put most or almost all of our programming actually on our website as well to broaden the availability of that to the folks who may not have cable TV.
So you can see the public access shows on, like, streamed online? Is that correct?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Johnson, I am not sure how much of the content through MTN is available online, but I understand that some or a lot of it is.
And then do we have any idea how many Comcast subscribers there are and what percent might watch public access?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Johnson, I would have to get those numbers. That's certainly something I could provide to you.
Great, thank you.
And just to touch a minute on the goals and values here, this program covers several city goals and values. Most importantly, it contributes to the One Minneapolis goal by providing diverse communities within our city the resources and opportunities to connect with broad audiences through TV programming. I know we're crunched for time, so I'll move through these really quickly, but I'd like you to see just a few quick highlights of how the department is doing. First, our proactive communications are getting very good results, and just one area I'd like to highlight is that we get a really good value from our proactive program when we look at news coverage that we generate. Based on our proactive media pitches, which we make in coordination with all departments, you can see, or in our results Minneapolis reports, you can see that both of the last 2 years, we've helped generate more than $20 million in what's called publicity ad value for news and information about city government's work. That's an industry metric that approximates what kind of money we would have to spend on paid advertising to have the same impact on the audience, bearing in mind that the public sees news coverage as more credible than paid ads. Video production. You may have noticed that in the last few years, our video productions have become more polished and more creative as technology and our approach to these videos has changed. We've also begun creating 4 versions of most of our videos. So they are generally produced in Spanish, Somali, and Hmong, as well as English. We now focus on producing short, high-impact videos that are easily shareable and watchable online, since that's where our videos can have the biggest effect these days. And if any of you, there's an example on the screen now, if any of you saw the Parklets time-lapse video from a few weeks ago, that's an example of a video where it took very little staff time to produce, but the video's gotten a lot of traction online and has done a really effective job of getting the word out about something new and exciting that the city is doing. Partnerships is another big one. We have partnerships both with Comcast Cable and Clear Channel Outdoor that allow us to take advantage of donated digital billboard and cable TV time for public service announcements. See a few examples here. They've helped us get out some very visible messaging to the public on things ranging from voting and snow emergencies to adopting pets from animal care and control. As a next step, we do plan to explore whether other partnerships may help us reach broader audiences with new tools at no additional cost to the city. And I don't think I mentioned this. These partnerships over the last couple of years have had a value amounting to $1 to $2 million annually in free airtime and free billboard space. Just two more. Graphic design is another area where we made significant changes and improvements. As you might have noticed, this slide got a little funny. I apologize for that. As you might have noticed, printed materials produced by the communications department for city departments are looking more consistent these days. And these are my poor PowerPoint skills. These should all be on one slide, but they're spread out to make it more exciting. You'll hear more about this in the near future as we move forward on rolling out the new look consistently citywide. But as with any large organization, clear brand standards will help us boost our credibility, professional image, and trustworthiness with the public. One last highlight is our internal communications. We have worked to strengthen and improve those, which we do in coordination with all departments. In addition to a new, more modern look and feel for City Talk and Minneapolis Matters, which you probably noticed, we've also begun working to develop new types of content that will better engage and inform employees. One quick example, we now feature a Results Minneapolis measure in each employee newsletter, and we'll continue to add new content which will help employees see how all of our work connects to the city's goals and values. We have 3 capital asset requests that are recommended for funding by the mayor, totaling just under $100,000. The first is replacement of a piece of equipment that's integral to the broadcast of city council and committee meetings. It's the computer system that runs the touch screen used by the chair and the presenter, among other things. The second is a request to replace 6 video cameras, which were at the end of their useful lives. Right now they're between 15 and 20 years old. And the third one is a small one. It's a request for a desk for an editing system that needs a home. I'll just sum up with this overview. Looking at the department's overall expenses, here are our proposed 2015 expenses with a comparison to 2014. As I've talked about, the overall increase of about 8.9% is due primarily to the addition of 2 additional staff in the proactive communications program. And again, this recommended increase will boost our capacity to do proactive communications work, allowing us to put a stronger emphasis on coordinating with NCR to reach residents in multiple languages, as well as to reach out into the community. That is our presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and I will gladly take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Lively. Council Vice President Glidden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I actually have a funding question that may be a little bit more for Ms. Christensen than for you, but has to do with this relationship with the franchise agreement. And so I know that the franchise agreement or the franchise fees from Comcast actually go into the general fund, and then some of them flow to your department. These are funds that, as I understand it, kind of have certain designations. So actually, some of them, and I'm seeing shaking head, but I'll just finish my question. So my understanding was that some of them had certain designations so that they couldn't be spent, say, on public works or on the police department, but maybe were designated to be spent in certain areas. Maybe I need to be corrected on that. But how long is our franchise agreement? I know you're sort of in the midst of kind of what's going on with Comcast, and how assured are we of those franchise fees into the future? Just as, again, I think sort of our reliance on that, we need to just look at it maybe with some eye to the future as well.
Chair Quincy, Council Vice President Glidden. I think I can answer most of that, and if I come up short, we can ask Sandy. To answer the shorter one first, our current franchise agreement with Comcast runs through 2021, so we have another 7 years on there. At that point, or prior to that point, we'll be negotiating a new franchise agreement with whoever the cable operator is at that time. To answer your question about funding, there are actually two types of fees that we receive from Comcast. One is our franchise fee, which is, I'm going to estimate, somewhere around $4 million a year. That is just a payment that goes to the general fund. We can do anything we want with those dollars. That fee is for use of city right-of-way by Comcast, so that's just an annual payment to us. The second are what's called PEG fees, or public education and government fees.
Yep.
And those are based on a subscriber basis. So those are fees that are on a cable bill every month. Those dollars come to the city. It's around $900,000 right now. And I could check that number, but I think that's about right. And those dollars must be used either for public access TV, government access TV, or educational access TV. And right now, and the way the city has used these traditionally is some of those dollars go to MTN, so that's our public access program I talked about. That's roughly at this point half of the PEG dollars that we receive. And the other half go to support our own video operations, which is the government part of PEG, government access, which are our two channels, 14 and 79.
Okay. And I'm looking right now in the franchise section of the budget book. I seem to remember, I thought the franchise section used to have a little bit more detail on the franchise agreements. We might want to just think about that to describe sort of not just what's the revenue, but kind of what's the basis of the revenue, so we can understand that and the trend. I think that's just an issue of transparency around understanding the fees that go into the city. I see that it's anticipated to generate $3.5 million for the city in 2015, which is an increase from 2014, but different from the figures that you provided, Mr. Lively, just a little bit different. And I assume that means that somehow there's some fluctuation in the amount that we get that may depend on sales or something like that. So.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden, what you might be seeing is that each year we make a projection, or we project longer term about what we think those numbers will be. Typically, we've taken a pretty conservative approach to projecting what those numbers will be. So our budgeted number for 2014, for example, is less than what we will actually receive, as it turns out, in 2014, because of the rates can change based on those PEG fees, which is a subscriber-based dollar amount. So you may see, if you see in recent years any sort of up and down, it's probably attributable to the fact that we're underestimating and then bringing in more dollars than we might have estimated. Generally speaking, those fees have gone up every year. They haven't skipped it down at any point.
Okay. And then just my last question, just because Councilmember Andrew Johnson had asked a question about other providers. I thought that our franchise agreement was non-exclusive. So in other words, if another provider wanted to come forward and serve the public, then that could be accommodated through our franchise agreement. So we are not excluding other providers. It's really what the market's doing. Am I right on that?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Glidden, yes, that is absolutely correct. We do have an open franchise, which means that any company that wanted to come in, apply for a franchise, and go through that process and meet those requirements would be able to get a franchise within Minneapolis.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see here. What is the source? So I'm looking at your last page, 2 new FTEs to increase capacity for proactive communications work, and the 2 bullet points that follow after. What's the source of that funding? Is that the TIF, or is that the general funds?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, as referenced in David Rubador's presentation, those dollars would be from the consolidated TIF, and Sandy Christensen would be the person if we wanted to get more into that, but my understanding is that's where those funds would come from.
Would the proposal be to have these positions be funded through the TIF for next year only, or for multiple years after that?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, that I would have to refer to Ms. Christensen.
Ms. Christensen. Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, the budget recommendation is for ongoing funding through the consolidated TIF funding source. If there was a future point in time in which that resource was not able to appropriately fund those positions, they would be brought back before the Ways and Means Committee and or through the budget process. We would be re-looking at the continuation of funding those positions. But at this point in time, there's an expectation that the increased amount of TIF increment generated from the increased property values is not likely to decrease in the near future.
I'm looking at the budget, the 2015 to 2014 comparison, and so adopted 2014 was 805,159. The 2015 recommended is 972. Can you summarize what the change, the 167,559 in the change? Can you just summarize what that will cover?
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, if we're comparing the salaries and wages line item here, the 2014 adopted and the 2015 adopted, the difference there would be primarily attributable to these two new positions. Some of those positions would also be reflected in other lines here, other rows, obviously including fringe benefits and some operating costs if we have space needs based on new employees, that sort of thing. But primarily in salaries and wages, that's what accounts for that change.
So that's roughly two positions at the $70,000 level or something like that? Chair
Quincy, Councilmember Cano, that's correct.
Okay.
Ms. Christensen, did you?
Chair Quincy, I'm sorry to interrupt if I may.
Yeah, please.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano. It's two positions roughly divided in half. The actual salary amount would be lower than what you referenced. Communication specialist starting is probably somewhere around 45,000. With salary and benefits, we start to get closer to 65, 70 for our accounting purposes.
Thank you for that clarification. And I just want to get a sense of how you're all thinking about this. So I'm looking at the summary of the description that talks about the two new positions doing work that includes more than just the multilingual communications. Can you talk a little bit about that? Just because I've worked in the communications department before, and I worked in Minneapolis Public Schools, and we only served 34,000 people. We didn't serve an entire city, and it was extremely difficult to fulfill the role of multilingual communications. And at that point, there was 4 of us doing that work, and it was both proactive and reactive work. And it seemed like a very big challenge when we would get pulled in to do other enterprise-related work. And so I'm just curious about why we're not explicitly saying these positions are multilingual. They're going to be multilingual 100%, both proactive and reactive multilingual. And I see that there's other responsibilities kind of included in the description.
Sure. Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, I'd be happy to talk about that. We had not envisioned these as translator positions. One big reason for that is that we do have a translation function within the city that we think works pretty well through NCR, which does this with a combination of NCR staff time and vendor relationships. To talk more broadly, maybe some specific examples would be more helpful. To talk more broadly about how this work would cross beyond sort of the boundaries of just multilanguage communication. Anytime that we take on a project, there are levels of work that need to happen. So if we're working on public works to get something out and we need to reach a specific community within the city, we need someone who's a communication specialist, generalist, who can take that process from beginning to end and really make sure that the multi-language aspect is integrated and in things they're not working on as well. So it wouldn't be just looking at their own work, but the work that's going on elsewhere in the department, sort of shepherding those areas that need to have a multi-language component. For example, one of the things we would really like to do when we're moving forward on, and these resources would help a lot with, is some additional video programming. So a regular, and we'll say monthly for now, but we could adjust timing, mini newscast in multiple languages that really covers city news and information in 4 different languages. And that is something that, we have video and editing resources that we could work with on that, but what we really need is production, writing, compilation, managing, pulling together those shows. That sort of thing is going to necessarily require working with departments on a lot of what we think of as general communications functions, but pulling it all together to get it out to different audiences through different channels.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to be clear, and I'm glad we're on the same page that these are not translator positions. That is definitely not the way that these positions should be approached. So I'm glad to hear you talk about possibly television spots, so monthly television spots in Univision and Somali TV, Spanish language radio, Hmong language radio, that sort of thing. And I guess that's what I'm asking, is that all that work really is a full-time position, one full-time position, and if not, obviously two. So I guess I'm just trying to understand if this is what they're going to dedicate their time to the entire time, or if they're going to be pulled in to do other things that will involve developing content in English, supporting the other roles within the department, which is something that happened a lot at Minneapolis Public Schools. And so you saw that the multilingual unit was constantly drained of energy and time and resources to provide support for the other unmet needs in the organization. So I'm just trying to figure out if these positions are going to be truly dedicated to serving multilingual residents in the dynamic facets that you just mentioned that require extensive time.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, with the staff that we have now, a lot of folks spend some of their time on multilanguage communications. And I would envision with 2 additional folks that they would be spending a lot of their time on things specifically related to this area. Mm-hmm. And others will as well, as we do now. So, if I were to divide it out into exactly how many FTEs that is, it might be about 2. But certainly anybody who will be a communication specialist in the department will be somebody who can, when needed on a project basis, take on something where we need communication support. And obviously we would look to focus those in areas where there's a strong multilanguage aspect to those. And another thing I'd like to add to that is, although these are not envisioned as translator positions, as with any department, if we did end up with 1 or 2 of these folks who do speak languages other than English, that would only be a benefit to us in our work and would allow us to go farther in that work.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely imperative that these folks speak other languages. Otherwise, why are we talking about multilingual communications? My last question is, what is the relationship of the hiring timeline for the new director of communications to these 2 positions? Because it seems to me that we need more expertise on board that has experience executing successful multilingual communication plans and how that relates to 2 new positions.
Chair Quincy, Councilmember Cano, I do not know what the timeline is for hiring a new city coordinator.
Yeah, let's save that question on hiring that position to the coordinator's presentation later this afternoon.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Lively.
Thank you.
Appreciate your fast talking as we tried to catch up a little bit on time. So we're going to move quickly to Mr. Lane's presentation on the Office of Emergency Management, which, by the way, is on budget books, pages F61 through 65.
Us Mac guys out here. There we go.
As you're ready, Mr. Lane, we'll just let you jump right in.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Barrett Lane. For the record, I am the Director of the Office of Emergency Management, and I'm here this morning to brief you very briefly so that we can make up some time here on the Mayor's recommended budget for our office for 2015. Before we start that, I just want to lay a little bit of context here. We are now in the 3rd year of rebuilding emergency management as an enterprise-serving, enterprise-focused organization. The function as emergency preparedness was removed from regulatory services in 2011. In 2012, we adopted our present strategic plan. That strategic plan guides everything we do. Our vision is one of resilience, internal resilience, resilient Minneapolis organization serving a resilient Minneapolis community. And we do that by preparing for, responding to, recovering from, and mitigating against major disasters and complex events. That having been said, last year we took that concept and we built a staffing plan around it, and I'm pleased to say that this year that staffing plan has come to fruition. For the first 6 months of this year, Diana Roman and I were the Emergency Management Department, and I am very pleased to say that we have been joined by some very, very talented folks starting in July. So just laying the foundation, if you will, for the rest of the presentation here. So I do want to say, just if I have a moment, thank you to Diana Roman. She has been a real public servant throughout this time period. She's our admin analyst 1, and she's just done a great job supporting me during this transitionary period. So I think it's really important to recognize her. Joining us today is one of our new team. Tina Folsch joins us from the state of Minnesota. She's our Finance and Admin Section Chief. So we can go quickly through the presentation here, and certainly I can take any questions that you might have. This is our current configuration as far as staffing goes. A variation of this was shown to you last year as we were building this team up. The reason it's structured this way is that we want to play the way we train. And that means we've set ourselves up so that in the event that we have an event, we are actually staffed in exactly the same way. So our operations section chief will work in the operations part of the EOC. Our planning section chief will be in charge of planning. We don't want to have that shifting of roles and lanes in the event that we have to respond. So at this point in time, we are at 6.5 FTEs. We have one part-time person here on the team, and you can see how they're kind of laid out there. Here's the quick budget overview. We've achieved this staffing level without any additional resources last year, and we're not asking for any additional general fund resources this year. Part of this restructuring has allowed us to access, for the first time in several years, some grant dollars that are in place that we can use to help support our operation here. And because of the way we were structured in the reorganization, we were not able to use those dollars for technical grant reasons. After the reorg, we are. So you can see that we're matching, $750,000 with $250,000 worth of grant money. So we've got some exposure to the grants there, but I think not too much. Just note that $264,000 is part of the $1.1 million that is below there. The rest of those dollars are invested in citywide projects with police, fire, public health, public works. We're working with the parks and schools this year, and we have a $50,000 project set aside to work with ECHO Minnesota, which you may be familiar with, to deal with issues of cultural communities and racial equity. So we've got that in our grant program for next year. Our operating budget is directly related to our mission. So the mission is here, and we were asked to touch very briefly on these 3 points. I think it goes without saying that a resilient city is well-run, and a well-run city is resilient. In the area of growing the city, we're not much of a driver of growth, but we are responsible for dealing with the consequences of growth. Opportunity and risk go together. So the more density we have, the more top-tier events we have, the more vibrant we become. That does mean that we need to be standing ready to make sure that those things remain safe and that we have the capability to deal with issues should they arise. And then lastly, in the area of racial equity, we are charged by the federal government, and as well we should be, by engaging the whole community in the emergency management planning cycle. So throughout mitigation, preparedness and response and recovery, we want to make sure that we're engaging the whole community. That is something that is on our work plan and is specifically charged to our planning section chief for next year, Dr. Lori Burns, who will be bringing that process forward. We're going to be developing a whole community policy that directly supports the racial equity program that the city has put together. So we hope to see those things link up very strongly. We have done some research into this. We retained a graduate student to do a white paper for us, just looking at the intersection of racial equity and emergency management, and we think we've got some good best practices coming out of that. Here's our links to goals and values. Pretty much in the area of a city that works and living well, that's where our major focuses are: safety, health, and connectedness. How's the department doing? We're going to go very quickly through this. We are doing great now that we are back up to a baseline staff. And again, I can't be more pleased with the folks that have chosen to join us here in the emergency management office. We're really looking forward to digging into this and pushing this organization to the next level in 2015. We did manage the second declared disaster that since I've been the emergency management director. The June storms and the July storms and their unprecedented rainfall did result in a declaration. Ultimately, fortunately, the city itself was not terribly impacted, about $6,500, but as you may know, the parks and some other major institutions within the city were. And due to the fact that we were able to get a declaration extended to Hennepin County, they have access to federal resources for that recovery. We validated our emergency operations plan once again this year. That's a state requirement, and we've been able to achieve that. We are going to be rebuilding that program from the scratch next year. So we're going to be going through each component and rebuilding that so that we have a state-of-the-art emergency operations plan that's ready to take us forward. We provided support to Incident Command during the All-Star game. We had the Emergency Operations Center up and running, not so much because we expected something to happen, but because it was a great training opportunity. Very few people have the opportunity to come to a live EOC and see how it runs and see how it works. We use this opportunity to stand it up and walk through those paces, and again, get good after-action report out of that, good lessons learned. Likewise, the radiation dispersal device, full-scale exercise that we had on Boom Island, this was a real response scenario. Fire trucks, police, fire, public works, public health were out there responding to a simulated, underlying simulated radiation device on Boom Island. And my thanks to the Park Board and Park Police for their cooperation in staging that. That was primarily an exercise that was integrated with the U.S. Coast Guard. Lastly, we're completing a revision of our threat, hazard, and risk assessment. This is the foundation of everything we do. So we are a risk-driven organization, and an understanding of our risks, hazards, and threats is the basis for building out the right capabilities and the right sizes. We do have one CARS request in this, $15,000. We use IP phones up at the Emergency Operations Center. That allows us to be very flexible about how we reconfigure our space while making sure that people who are calling the EOC, the customers, have a consistent point of contact. You don't want to be working phone lists in the middle of a disaster, so we can configure that space, and it's completely transparent to the user. We want to extend that capability to MECC, which is the backup EOC, and then Curry, which is the backup to that. General fund, we're not asking for any enhancements this year. There is $50,000 built in here. That was the finance recommendation for overhead cost increases. But other than that, it's status quo as far as the budget's concerned, but it's not status quo as far as current service level is concerned. We're going to be going far and above next year. Special revenue, our grant picture, again, we get about $1 million with federal grants here that we manage. Some of that is going into our program, and the rest of it is being used project-wise throughout the city. Slight change in that 10%. So, highlights. Again, the allocation recommended by the mayor is combined with the grant resources. Sorry about that. So combined with the grant resources we have are sufficient to maintain our operations the next year. We are 26% funded by grants. So I just want to flag that for folks. We've talked about this in the past. That does have some risk associated with it. I think that it's a reasonable risk. I don't think we're overexposed here. Out of $1 million grant portfolio, we'd have to go through a lot of federal grant changes before we start impacting staffing that's been allocated. And indeed, we'd have a sufficient time, I think, to deal with it before that change actually hits. We discussed that with the mayor, but again, I just want to flag these. These are risks. I think they're reasonable risks. This money is being used essentially as bridge financing. Eventually, we will have to deal with the general fund size of this. We don't want to be in a Clinton cop situation, so we're going to continue to monitor that. And then we're going to reevaluate our staffing needs. So we're, again, in this very beginning stages of restaffing the organization. I think we've got a good baseline based on the national standards that we've adopted. We're going to have to let that run for a while and make sure that people have reasonable workloads and that we're accomplishing our mission in a reasonable time. But I don't foresee any immediate needs to change staffing levels, but we'll continue to monitor that to make sure that we have a reasonable program for it. I think we covered most of this. The grant outlook is stable for 2015. That's good news. I think we're probably stable-ish in the midterm, but again, it's something to watch. The pressures on the federal government are many and great. So how that gets worked out as far as these particular grants go, we don't know, but we'll certainly continue to monitor that through our legislative program. And that is all I have. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lane, for your presentation, and more importantly, for the work that you do. The less we see of you, the better off we all are.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure you have had a great sigh of relief with the addition of your staff complement, which will help us accomplish our goals of resiliency that you've outlined so eloquently. Are there any questions or comments from our colleagues? Not seeing any. I want to thank you very much.
Appreciate your support.
Ms. Ferguson, you've caught up on time, thanks to a large part by Mr. Lane.
Brevity is the soul of wit, sir.
I do trust you. I really do. Did you do it? I love it. Thank you. All right. I think it's still morning.
Oh, good morning, Ms. Ferguson.
Good morning, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
it's still morning. This is the Human Resources Department presentation, and it's located on budget book pages F99 to F108. Welcome, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share what our vision is for the next upcoming fiscal year. First thing I just want to highlight is our departmental organizational chart. And if we could move ahead, Mr. Bernardi. We are proposing to stay at our current funding levels with a few enhancements that I'd like to talk with you about. The first enhancement is additional support for an HR staff person who would specifically work in the Hiawatha facility. Public Works is a partnership between Human Resources and Public Works, and that will be one additional FTE. The other proposed enhancements are a $35,000 enhancement for our licensing agreement with NeoGlove, which is our new applicant tracking system. And the third one is an additional $25,000. This is a new program to support employee recognition for the entire enterprise. I'd just like to give a brief overview of the areas of human resources. The first area is in HR administration, and the purpose and role of this particular area is to ensure that the HR strategic direction is aligned with the city goals and values. We also support the Civil Service Commission. We also do the policy development for human resources, results in Minneapolis, and also EEO and affirmative action reporting. How this aligns with the mayor's priorities is in the area of equity, ensuring that the design of policies, practices, and are designed to promote ethics and fairness in employee decisions, and in the area of running the city well, ensuring that the HR direction is in alignment with the city's values and goals. How that links to the city's goals is in a few areas. The first one is in the city that works, and the next one is in equity and also in connectedness. The next area of human resources is in strategic workforce solutions. And the purpose of that area is to provide employee and organizational opportunities that really lead to effective and efficient leadership, and the programming is focused on attracting, retaining, leading, and managing a diverse city workforce. And those areas include recruitment, retention, the HR generalist teams, enterprise learning development, Perform Minneapolis, which is our performance management system, testing, staffing services, and workforce planning and leave administration. How that ties into the mayor's priorities is in running the city well and also in equity, ensuring that we have fair practices for our employees. I just want to spend a little bit more time talking about the enhancement that we're proposing for strategic workforce solutions. This is a partnership specifically that is between Public Works and Human Resources. They approached us because of the need to have some additional support at the Hiawatha facility. It's a standalone facility, and they would really like to have some more support in that particular facility. It will be, the benefits to that is to have more proactive planning, to avoid and mitigate employee relations issues, and really to work to support the managers at that particular site. We're hoping that through this partnership, we can mitigate any risk, we can facilitate more equity, and that we can really provide some additional support for the employees at that particular facility. That is in alignment with our commitment to equity and also in our commitment to running the city well. And again, that aligns with the city's goals around a city that works, and it also aligns with equity. The third area of human resources is in human resource technology solutions. And this area in human resources provides implementation, training, and ongoing support around the systems and the applications in the areas of compensation, performance management, and compliance. This technology area is aligned with the mayor's goals around running the city well by streamlining processes and systems, communicates relevant shared data to enhance data-driven decisions, and it also helps to provide real-time data to enhance equity decisions and provides a greater reporting capability for employees and other stakeholders. The enhancement that we're proposing in this area is with the NeoGov applicant tracking system. We are in the process of rolling that system out now. It is a system that is used by many of the government entities within the city and within the state. And it is really designed to help us really become a little bit more efficient and effective in how we bring people in. It's much more intuitive. It's much more user-friendly, not only for potential employees to the city, but also hiring managers. And so this will help us to continue to upgrade our system that we currently are working on. And it also really will help us to become much more efficient and effective in our tracking of employees and also in the reporting capabilities. We've provided a couple of examples in your information to show how this system will really help us. We're hoping that through the system and its design, we can get data that you just see here where we can reduce the time for time to fill. We can have much more of a greater and much more robust reporting capability. We can provide much more real-time data, which helps our business owners, our department heads, and other people who need information regarding our employees be able to have that data that helps them drive the decisions that they need to make. And how that links to the city's goals and values is in a couple of areas. City that works helps us to become more efficient and effective, and also it helps us to have a greater sense internally in terms of equity, in terms of how the information that we're getting really does help us make decisions around equity. Last but certainly not least is our area around employee services. This area focuses on labor relations, benefits wellness, classifications, compensation, and employee investigations. This area is a very needed and vital part of our organization, and the areas that it helps, that we have in this area, this program or this department, helps to align in the following areas. Number one is around equity, by assuring non-discriminatory application of wages, benefits, and other terms and conditions of employment. It also allows early intervention into claims of discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. And it also ensures that we are in compliance with any state mandated pay equity requirements. It helps us to become efficient in terms of controlling our benefits costs, engaging employees in their health and wellness, and ensuring that we are in alignment with the perimeters of the law, and ensuring compliance with all state and federal posting requirements. Let's go to the next slide, please. Lastly, one more. The area that I'd like to focus on now is an enhancement that we're asking around employee recognition program. In previous engagement a few years ago, as well as in the most recent engagement survey, we continue to have a need as a city to provide recognition or formal recognition opportunities for our employees. One of the areas that we've identified in our new and adopted city goals is that employees are engaged and they see the value in public service. In our employee recognition survey, more than 90% of our employees said they want their work to be valued and recognized. And less than half felt that their contributions are recognized in a meaningful way. So with this recognition program that we currently are in pilot form, it's a wonderful way to show employees that they are valued and supported, and again, it aligns with our values. Recognizing that this is not the end-all be-all, that this recognition program, which we call the Star Recognition Program, is only one way to value employees. It does not in any way take the place of the day-to-day interactions and how managers and we as all people support employees by letting them know that they're doing a great job. But it is a great visible way of recognizing and honoring employees for the work that they do on a daily basis. We just have a couple of slides to show the importance in engagement surveys, or any survey for that matter, in acting on the recommendations in the engagement survey. One of the most important things in any survey is it's one thing to do a survey, but it's another thing to act upon the recommendations in a survey. And this is a concrete example by putting the Star Recognition Program that we can go back and let employees know that we heard you, we understood what you said, and we've come up with a way to recognize you. I'd also like to add that the Star Recognition Program may be facilitated and coordinated by the Human Resources Department, but it is overseen, managed, and supported by a wonderful cross-section group of employees that represent the entire enterprise. We do not decide who will be the recipients of these awards. The only role that HR plays in this is to facilitate the process. But it is a completely employee-driven, employees make the decisions, and the employees actually meet on a very regular basis to make sure that this program is going to be something that's really reflective of what the needs, wishes, and wants are of employees. So, I'm sure there's a burning question that you've been asking yourself today. How is the department doing? I'm so glad you asked. So, these are just a few statistics that we're most proud of as a department. But before I say this, I just want to take a step back. Within the last 3 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of hiring within the city. There's no great secret that we have been in a hiring freeze as a city. But if you look at these statistics, in 2013, we processed 12,024 applications. That's only processing applications. That has nothing to do with testing. That has nothing to do with setting up interviews. That has nothing to do with doing the job offers and providing additional support. That's literally how many applications, how many people applied to the city of Minneapolis for a position. And of that, in 2013, we had 147 brand new hires to the city. So far, we're still not at the end of the year. We've had a 75% increase in applications. And that represents a 50% increase in new hires over previous years. So why is that important? Why that is important is that represents people who are new to the city, but it also represents the type of investment that human resources and managers have to play, as we do, in making sure that these individuals have the support that they need once they're hired, but also have the support that they need on an ongoing basis. The other thing I'd like to mention is around in the area of benefits and wellness. Our wellness program participation rate is well above the local and national norms, and that's something that we should be proud of. That shows us that employees are engaged. That shows that employees are taking responsibility for their health. That shows that employees really want to do the right thing, and we continue to see these numbers grow in this area. We've also have a positive renewal results for Medica for 2015. And lastly, in labor relations, we continue to have 100% of our labor contracts within budget, and we have no job actions or interest arbitrations. Given the fact that we're a 92% union, I think that's something that we should always be proud of, that we have a great relationship with the unions and that we're doing it in the confines of the city's goals, visions, and values. The other thing I'd just like to add around this hiring is that if many of you may have looked at our Results in Minneapolis report, you know, we are moving the dial in racial equity. If you look at the numbers, you know, it is slow. We didn't all of a sudden yesterday have 3,000 new employees. We have to go with the number of new employees that we have. But we are continuing to move the dial on racial equity. And can we get better? Absolutely. And some of the things that we have outlined in HR's business plan are really designed to look at areas in terms of how do we support managers, how do we give them the tools and resources, what kinds of trainings that we need to do, and how much more of a robust reporting mechanism do we need to have that really shows, demonstrates, and proves our commitment to racial equity. So just a brief summary of what we've talked about this morning is our total human resource budget increases from $8.7 million to $9.1 million, which equates to a 4.5% increase. And just again, to reinforce the areas that we are proposing is a 1 full-time equivalent to support the Public Works Department in Strategic Workforce Solutions, a $35,000 license fee for our applicant tracking system, and lastly, but certainly not least, $25,000 for an enterprise employee recognition program. And then we have an overview of our 2015 budget compared to our 2014 budget. Thank you very much, and do we have any questions at this time?
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson. I'm actually not seeing any questions. I think it may have something to do with being about 11:30 on a Friday. But I do want to thank you for all the work that you do and the department does. And at Minneapolis, because of that work and the work that our employees do for us, makes Minneapolis a great place to work. So thank you for that role in that.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to give me a call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson. We are, I think, completed with our budget hearings for this morning. And as noted by the clerk, we'll need to take an informal action of receiving and filing what we've just heard. So that's done because no vote is required and no quorum is required. But that action's taken, and all these presentations are available online and posted to our website as relates to the budget hearing and the budget process. So with nothing further, I think we'll adjourn until 1 o'clock, where we'll take up the next conversation of the coordinator IGR budget department hearing. Thank you all.